to another edition of the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert. My guest today is Paul Greenberg. He is the managing principal of the 56 Group. He's also a best-selling author and a CRM industry strategist and analyst who has influenced the space over many years now. Paul can be seen all over the CRM software ecosystem, giving talks, writing, and advising companies both on the vendor side and the buyer side. He's the author of the book CRM at the Speed of Light, which has been through multiple editions, and he'll soon release a new book, Commonwealth of SelfInterest, and we're really glad to be able to welcome him today. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, totally my pleasure, Jason.
So last time we saw you speaking in the context of the dynamic CRM community, I believe you were talking about the meaning of being customer-driven and how you define that as part of a Microsoft virtual event. Could you tell our listeners, in case they weren't at that event, so how you define the idea of being customer-driven and how your latest research has shaped that definition?
Well, I mean, the primary thing with customers now is that they have a different dynamic when it comes to the way they interact with companies, and it's changed their expectations enormously of those companies, right? So, for example, think of yourself, really. I mean, you know as well as I do, given we're recording digitally, that you're a digital customer yourself, too, and you're using digital tools all the time, and you're using devices that are digital, and you're using apps that are digital. You're pretty much in a panic when you lose your smartphone, and I called it a smartphone, not a cell phone, meaning that that's probably the device you're using as opposed to something that merely does calls. In other words, the world's changed dramatically, but it's also changed irrevocably, and it's the norm now to be digital, right? And it's not something that was exceptional or cool or, oh, wow, look, they got Google Glass on or something like that, right? It's something we do. Now, given that, it's forced companies into a really interesting place because when you boil it down to it, company has one thing that it's in existence for, which is to make money. That's what it does. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have social good. They do. I'm not saying they don't produce things that benefit the world. But if you're a for-profit company, by definition, your job is to make money and to try to be profitable in the course of making money, right? So what they have to do in order to do that is have customers. And what that means is they have to do things that the customers are asking of them in order to maintain the interest of those customers. Because the dynamics are different, customers are demanding a lot more, but the problem a business has is that it's constrained, right? Right from the beginning of its existence, it was constrained. It was constrained by revenue and money in dollars. It was constrained by labor. It was constrained by the cost of everything. It was constrained by regulation. It's constrained. You name it, it's constrained. So on the other hand, the customer really doesn't care about a business's constraints. The customer says, look, you have 1 million customers. I don't care about the constraints that you have. I don't care about the 999,999 other customers you have either. You need to take care of me. And you need to take care of me in a way that makes me think that you care enough about me to want to take care of me. So businesses, when you talk about customer driven, you're talking about companies that are willing to go to the wall to do that, but to do that within reason, too. I mean, customer driven doesn't mean customer, we are a universe, when I say that, meaning the technology world we exist in primarily, we're a universe of hyperbole, right? I mean, customer obsession and customer delight and most customers don't care about that. What they care about is you want to do business with me, I want to do business with you, let's do it. And it's a utilitarian interaction. That doesn't mean they don't love companies, but they don't love companies the way you love your spouse, for God's sake. It's a company, right? So consequently, what you have a situation where a company has to say, all right, then if I'm to be customer driven, it doesn't really mean, because I can't afford to be, in fact, customer obsessed or always providing customer delight 24/7. What it means is I have to be good enough, and that's critical words there, good enough to provide the customers with what they feel is enough of an interaction experience that allows them to feel as if they want to continue to do business with us. And they feel like I know them in some personal way, meaning a personalization. That's customer driven. And you have to invest the time, money, and effort into doing that. Even though we're taking it down a notch from delight and we're taking it down a notch from obsess, it's still a pretty costly endeavor, and it takes up that time and money and has to fall within whatever regulatory constraints you're constrained by, et cetera, in order to succeed. So you got a very, very interesting conundrum when you're calling it customer driven. the interpretation tends to be obsessed. But the actual idea of customer driven means give the customers what's good enough for them to want to continue to do business with you.
A lot of the customer driven approach that you see as shaping the future, you've written recently, sort of stems from both the idea of culture and the idea of systems. Culture within a business and the way the leadership sets the tone, but also the way the people making the decisions at the company look at it in terms of technology versus, I guess, organizational or process-based or cultural changes. You think that technology is sort of winning out in the last few years when it comes to being customer driven or thinking about other matters related to customer experience and CRM, maybe more specifically as a discipline?
Nah, I mean, winning out, no. Becoming more important, yeah. Ultimately, culture and human beings trump everything, right, in this thing, right? Because we're dealing with humans, right? And that's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, look, I'm a geek. I love tech. I have every imaginable tech device you can think of. I mean, I literally, health devices, you name it. But I'm also first and foremost doing that because I want them. And that's the way I tend to react well. In other words, if I've dropped a lot of weight over the last few years. I used to weigh 257, now I weigh 190. But what drove me isn't I need to lose weight for my health in a manner of speaking. I'm ashamed to say, although it kind of started the trend. But it was my ability to follow through was because I could enter stats on my fitness pal every day. I could use a device that gave me numbers that allowed me to measure against something that was a norm that I needed to get to, et cetera, et cetera. But here was the key. I like doing that, right? I like doing that. Meaning I'm a human being who likes something. There are people who have other ways and means and motivations to get there. So technology enables things. It supports things. It's become even a driver in some instances of things that humans do. But culture is still going to trump all of this. Why? Because ultimately this is all based on the self-interest of every individual on this planet, one way or the other. And when I say self-interest, I don't mean selfishness. I mean self-interest, meaning you have hopes, you have dreams, you have ideas, you have stresses on you, you have things you want to do today that you don't want to do tomorrow, where Dan, say, has exactly different versions of those things. And you could go person by person who you know and find out in every single instance, those hopes, dreams, ideals, activities are different. And the things that you use to filter and think through things, the metaphors are different. But all that said, because we're individuals, there's one thing that all 7.5 billion of us have in common, which is we want to be happy. And on that journey to being happy, we want to be happy. We don't want to be miserable to get there, right? And we guide our lives through that, really. So I might geek out over devices, but ultimately it probably added some years to my life, and that's great. But somebody else might just say, no, they're probably smarter than I am, saying, well, I don't need those. I just need the motivation to lose weight, period. And so on and so forth. So because of that, culture is the driver of everything. So when you're in a company and you're talking about CRM, right? There's 100,000 versions of what people define CRM as, but nonetheless, one way or the other, you're talking about customer-facing activities. Unless individuals see in their self-interest to do that, meaning not only does the company benefit, so do I, it's going to be a lot harder to get it adopted. It's going to be a lot harder to get people to deal with customers unless it's in their self-interest. So, for example, if you say, hey, you work for this company, and because you work for this company, you're going to be talking to customers. And because you're talking to customers, you have to represent this company really well and do really well by our customers because we really care about our customers. And you're going to say, okay, I'll do that. With the reason probably not because of that, although in part, just because you care, yeah, you're going to do that. But the other reason is because you don't do that, you might get fired. And I'm not being cynical. I mean, these are things that go on in people's heads. There's motivations that are very different. Or the company says, you know what, not only that, but thank you for being that way. And and we're going to reward you in some way. We'll reward you with a thanks, or we'll reward you with $500, whatever, but we'll reward you in some way. And you know what? You appreciate that. You appreciate being recognized for the good work you did with the customers. So there's self-motivation. There's self-interest always involved in everything everyone does. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's just how humans are. We all want to be happy. So we do those things to make us happy. So culture trumps it. Technology, if you like the technology, and technology seems to be something that can actually enable better results, and those better results, which are, you saying, yes, they are better results, which is, of course, a subjective decision ultimately, then you use technology. If you don't think that, then you're not gonna, whether you should or not, right? You have to be feeling that you should, right, in order to use it. So, yeah, technology is important, but more important is human self-interest, human interaction, and humans' enlightened self-interest, meaning they feel good about helping others, right? Those are the things that really matter.
In working with, because you work with software vendors, you also talk with companies that are investing in solutions. Right. When you talk to them, and maybe start with the vendor side, do you think? Well, maybe start with the buyer side. Are they thinking in terms of? Do you think they're thinking in terms of like, let's look at the cool tech first, and then think about how we can fit that into making our user base, our sales force, our customer service team, whoever, find use in this and find ways to adopt it? Or do you think they are thinking a little more holistically about who's on their team and what will make them feel motivated to use it?
Depends on the company. A lot of them, there's a third aspect to that. It's not like, let's look at the cool tech. It's like, everyone else is using this. We probably should use it too, right? There is that. And there's a lot of that goes on. I mean, those are wrong decisions, obviously. Just the tech is always what comes last, not first. The thing is that it really does, like, for example, I'm not going to use my client specifically. I'll just use a general company I know does a good job in this area. GE is, even though you see all kinds of commercials about sort of the human side of technology with GE, they're very, very much culturally focused. But, they answer to a board of directors. They answer to the stock market and shareholders. So they have to be cognizant of all that. But at the same time, GE puts a lot of time and effort into making sure that the right people are doing the programmatic, are executing on the programs that have been developed due to the strategy over both the long and short term that they've evolved to be kind of an end-to-end company when it comes to the thinking about how they're going to impact the business world and also in general humanity in their case. On the other hand, there are other companies who will remain completely nameless that have, well, I'll tell you a story, actually, that goes back a couple of years. But a few years ago, and you'll understand how wild back it is when I mention the company involved up to a point. I got this call from this consultancy I know that said one of their clients, which is a very large, at the time, very large mid-sized company, had just called them and said, hey, we bought, and I'm not kidding when I tell you this number, I think it was $3 million worth of PeopleSoft CRM. What do we do with it? I told the consultancy, the thing you should do is run for your life because you're going to get blamed for everything. So no matter what happens, even if you have nothing to do with the decision, right? So, but that's probably let's call it an edge case example, but it's not that far-fetched because you have a lot of companies looking at technology as the solution as opposed to the technology as the enabler, right? And that's where you have the problem of people coming up with, okay, we need to sales technology, let's say Salesforce automation will make us better operationally. So therefore, let's buy the technology and figure out what we want to do operationally with it, right? Which is totally wrong. Even though it's true, it's very likely that it will make them better operationally, but not if you buy the technology and then try to squeeze your operations to the technology. The idea is that if you're doing this, you're taking on the practitioner side, if you're taking the strategic look at this in an appropriate way, here's what you're thinking. You're thinking, all right, we have a return we're looking for our company over X time. In order to achieve that return, we have to do the following things and get the following outcomes from doing those things. Given those outcomes that we need, how does a technology in this domain help us? How's a particular company's technology in this domain potentially help us achieve those outcomes? That's the right way to think about it. And then you start looking at technology for the companies that are most appropriate when it comes to helping you achieve the outcomes you're looking for to get the return and results you want, right? Then you're doing it right. So this is what you see day and night too, man. It's just like scary. I mean, this is like 2016, right?
There've been enough mistakes made.
Yeah. And now that enough public mistakes, and social media has a whole lot to say about it too.
So you've written recently that your upcoming book, Commonwealth of Self-Interest, has also led you to realize that e-commerce, or maybe more specifically digital commerce in combination with physical commerce, is one of the key transactional elements of customer engagement in the 21st century. I guess in combination with that, one of the things I always like reading from you is your thoughts about where vendors should be going with their strategic direction. Should commerce be at the top of the list for any major CRM vendor now who doesn't already have it in-house?
Given the name of this organization and everything else, that's a funny question. Yeah, I'll put it this way. I just want to clarify one thing before I answer yes to your question. E-commerce is not the fourth pillar of CRM. I just want to make that clear, because what's happened is every company that's made an e-commerce acquisition has within a week claimed that there were always four pillars of CRM, including e-commerce, which of course a week before they made the acquisition, you'd never find a single reference to that anywhere in any of their stuff. All right. And that's been literally the last two major acquisitions have both claimed that. So the answer is, on that level, just be clear, there are three pillars of CRM that are historic, and they will remain that way. They're mature enough right now to just be what they are, which is sales, marketing, customer service, and that's that. On the other hand, e-commerce is a major consideration when it comes to especially a larger engagement ecosystem, a customer engagement ecosystem that's beginning to evolve and becoming a major strategic consideration of many companies. So the operational core of that ecosystem is CRM as we know it, and varying breakouts of that. And the transactional core is e-commerce. Now, that said, when you're dealing with companies on the scope and level of, say, Microsoft or Oracle or Salesforce or SAP or, companies of that magnitude, the larger companies, e-commerce becomes, at this point, digital commerce, as you rightfully said, digital commerce and physical commerce capability solutions becomes a major, important, key centerpiece for, let's call it, their next acquisition, right? If they haven't already done that, because they need, look, all four companies in varying degrees are transitioning from, on the customer-facing side, from pure CRM, hardcore operational CRM companies to more customer engagement focused. You see it in their messaging, you see it in the technologies, you see it in the partners that their ecosystems are beginning to engage, things like that. Right now, if that's the case, then digital/physical commerce solutions become something of great importance to that, because they need the transactional core. They have the operational core already. They're building the larger engagement, outreach kind of capabilities, systems of engagement, those kind of things. They're building that. They're building the analytics around customer engagement also. All of the companies are doing that. So a major piece which can't be missing is e-commerce. Now, I know three of the four we've talked about have that. Microsoft is the one that doesn't yet. I'm not sure who's left to buy out there. I mean, I know who's left. None of them are as good as the three that have been bought. So it's going to be something that, though, I think has to be considered by Microsoft now, as an important potential for their future. They're a good they're a great company at a lot of levels, and Satya Nadella is doing a remarkable job in transitioning the company to something new and different, which, if you care to get into it, just ask the question. But they are missing that piece, and they do need to. That's at this point becoming, not because of, let's say, 3 years ago it was, but now becoming table stakes. So they're going to have to start looking in that direction.
Yeah, I did want to get a little more into that. I mean, Microsoft has broadened its offerings into, field service, project service. They've made investments in customer service, portals, but we haven't seen the e-commerce or digital commerce. And to my mind, anyway, we also haven't seen the marketing automation investments that I might have expected. So not to maybe harp on one particular one, but do you expect Microsoft to continue to or make more big moves that really directly impact its CRM business? And maybe, obviously the big one that's most recent would be, I guess, LinkedIn. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, but maybe others too going forward.
Well, I mean, they kind of have to. I mean, look, Microsoft, here's the funny thing with Microsoft. I mean, when Satya spoke at Envision, which was the last conference I was at, throughout the conference, he implied a change, a significant escalation of direction is probably a better way to put it, without ever saying it, which was, I thought, a mistake because the idea is really good. From what I can understand and what I inferred from him and other speakers at the conference, and was confirmed to me by sources internally too, in terms of my outlook on it before I wrote the post on this, was that Microsoft is very interested now in becoming a critical piece of 21st century business infrastructure, almost like the matrix within it. Now, that's different than, say, Salesforce's view, which is to become, the platform that people are building on. It's an element of Microsoft's concept, but Microsoft literally wants to become the mesh almost for business infrastructure in the 21st century. And what that implies is obviously a huge push around Azure, which is really important in that regard. But it also implies having pieces in place they don't have yet. Now, the way, let's address one piece they do have, and then we'll go to the pieces they don't. They bought LinkedIn, all right? Now, what makes that a really interesting acquisition from the standpoint I just said, and it's the only standpoint it becomes interesting. Other than that, it's just buying an incredible database, right, with some capabilities. But what makes this really interesting, that if Microsoft really wants to be that, then LinkedIn becomes a critical part of that infrastructure too, because it's the personalization of the interactions. It's the data that's needed for the personalization of the interactions via insights that you can have on just millions of business individuals. And the interesting aspect, though, here's the test. When LinkedIn built Sales Navigator, which I always found to be crap, really. I never liked it. A lot of people do. I don't. They shut the API down, right? They closed the API for competitive reasons, which I completely thought was stupid, but they did anyway. They weren't listening to me particularly, which is not surprising. So here's what happens. If Microsoft now said, if it's true, and Microsoft wants to be what I'm presuming they want to be, then one of the key steps will be to reopen the API. And I've heard, I don't know how true it is, really. This is sheer speculative rumor, but I've heard that's going to happen. But I don't know that it's going to happen. I don't even have an inkling or any source that told me that. I've only heard it through my fellow gossipy analysts and influencers, right? So that's really important to that strategy, because you open the API, you then can become part of an infrastructure of business that's, makes you as much a steward as it does a participant. All right, that's one. Now, that said, I agree with you. I think the marketing piece for them is incredibly weak given everybody else's. Marketing Pilot hasn't really panned out the way it should. It's got a lot of stuff there, but it's a small acquisition. And it's really not the full Monty that you need for contemporary marketing automation, a la, say, Marketo or Eloqua was. Then the e-commerce piece problem there, of course, is the only pieces left are companies like, what's the name of it? I'm blocking the name completely. It'll come to me. But basically what they are more small business focused ones are the only remaining e-commerce applications out there, and none of them stand up to HEG or Hybris or Demandware, right? So it's not going to be that simple, because they're going to have to scale if they acquire one, they're going to have to scale it. I don't know that they're going to spend the time and money to build it. So it just may be a gap that they have, and they have to make that decision. It's just rough. If my hypothesis is right, I'm inferring that from the things that Satya said and wasn't explicit about, and then the other things I've heard and seen. So they're at a juncture, and an important one. I've been a fan of Microsoft's for, I don't know, a dozen years at least, and remain that. And I'm very impressed with Satya as a person, as a leader, as at least a visionary thinker. I don't know how much of these ideas are his per se, but let's say he presents the vision well. I think they need to be very explicit about it now and then just go. And that's going to imply more acquisitions along the lines we were just talking, others too, but more along those lines. And then that's going to also mean that Microsoft has to build out the thought leadership capabilities or thought leadership content that supports what they're trying to do. I think those two things are necessary and still not there, but that's only because they haven't been explicit. Does that answer your question in a long-winded way?
Yeah, it does. And maybe to take it a step in a slightly different direction, sticking on the Microsoft topic, they have, recently announced that they're doing something quite different with their product roadmap by breaking this traditional CRM Online offering into essentially its component pieces with Dynamics 365. What do you think of that from what you know so far?
Well, I mean, okay, so there's two things. They're doing more than that if you think about it with that, with Dynamics 365. They're also integrating ERP, right? I mean, meaning they're positioning it more end to end than historically, which is what SAP and Oracle do at least already, and Salesforce in a different direction because they don't really have ERP except through a couple of partners. But that goes to the heart of what I'm saying. If you're going to be part of the critical business infrastructure, and you're an ecosystem thinker, which Microsoft is, then you're going to have to do that. So on that part of it, I think it's a great move. On the component pieces, that's also answering a market movement toward microservices too, even though it's not fully that. The componentize is sort of let's call it a step one to a larger chunk than a microservice. A microservice is effectively more of and I'm being really simplifying it here, a widgeted task, a widgeted thing that you can, you can carry out where, they're more componentizing the larger pieces. So, but it is a nod in the head toward that. Because, I'm seeing move to microservices from both SAP, big time actually, and a little less, but some, and by Oracle and Salesforce too, a little, not as much. But if you type in microservices, you'll see there's a pretty robust discussion going on about it right now. So I like what Microsoft's doing. I also see it as integrated into the Office 365 hub, which I've seen for a while as not just a productivity play, but a unified communications play. So Microsoft, if again, I mean, in my case, it all is good because honestly, it supports my hypothesis. So I feel good about that, because ultimately, if you're going to be the mesh in the system, all of these things have to work seamlessly together, as seamlessly as humanly possible together and they have to be integrated pretty fully. And, if you have Azure as kind of the cloud infrastructure and an integrated Office 365 and Dynamics 365 working as a unified communications layer in combination with the end-to-end business app layer, you're doing pretty well. And you're simplifying too, by the way. You're simplifying, even though it might not look that way right now. Again, all this is based on me being right about my hypothesis. If I'm not, then I don't understand anything you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the maybe technical elements of what you described, I think, is the common data model that they're trying to build out, which, from what I can tell, is a pretty significant, architectural and sort of R&D effort to put this layer on top that does unify Office and the Dynamics products. Yeah, allowing for those kind of apps on top that are maybe, microservices or just new hybrid kind of apps or solutions that move across some of those different realms. Is that along the lines of what you think is interesting there, or do you think it's something else?
Again, if you think about it on the whole, you're seeing kind of what would be the word? I want to say unification, but that sounds kind of North and South Korean. I'm not really looking for it from a national standpoint here. It's just like you're seeing a no, that sounds ugly. Congealing isn't the right word either. An agglomeration, and an organization of all the elements of Microsoft that are designed for take it into account what you just said, a common data model, Dynamics 365 business applications, Office 365, if I'm right, unified communications hub, Azure cloud infrastructure. Take that in combination, just that for a moment. There's other pieces, obviously, but take that for a moment, and then componentization within that. But take all of that together. What do you get? Right, you get exactly what I was saying, right, which is you get a company that's driving to be a business infrastructure, a full-blown business infrastructure. Like basically, if I took all of that and dropped it down onto the globe, the world could theoretically run from it. Theoretically. I'm not saying practically. with those components and elements, just those really, you could run a large percentage of the business world, that is, on that. And I think that's what Microsoft's been aiming for in the last year or so. It has been, I think it envisioned they were hinting around, but I think now you're starting to see all these things being put in place that seem to sustain that idea. And the common data model just supports that, really.
Okay, so I wanted to sort of transition from R&D and software investments to partnerships briefly. One thing that caught my eye that you've written about recently, or a company you've written about, is Lithium, who are one of your Watchlist elite winners for the newest round. And it caught my interest because they were at WPC for Microsoft, and they were really talking up some of the performance they've been able to drive out of that partnership with Microsoft. Some very big wins, I think, in recent months. So, beyond the sort of what Microsoft might buy or what they might build, do you think these kinds of partnerships are sort of long-term important for Microsoft, or do you think they're more going to be, when they're product focused, that they're more preludes to potential acquisitions?
Well, I mean, in a matter of speaking, they're kind of intertwined, but here's what I would think. Microsoft is, when it boils down to revenue, is, as you well know, partner dependent. Now, not technology partner dependent, VAR, those kind of partners, reseller, consultancies, things like that. I mean, I forget the number, but depending on who you believe, it's somewhere between 95 and 98% of their revenue is, partner driven. Okay, that's one level. Microsoft also is probably, from the standpoint of the way they work with partners, to me, the best in the world. They understand partners. They really do. They're also ecosystem thinkers, which matters a great deal. So, given that, you have companies like Lithium, who are strategic partners of Microsoft, or Thunderhead, another company which is more on the customer journey side, who's a strategic partner of Microsoft. Both companies provide something that Microsoft does not have. In Lithium's case, the ability to build communities, a community platform. In Thunderhead's case, the journey platform. All right. Both companies have, with Microsoft, had, I don't know the numbers, I'm call this more metaphorical, large multi-million-dollar wins, or $1 million wins, or whatever, with Microsoft, because of the power of Microsoft and their programs and the deep integrations that have been built between them, and also by the fact that Microsoft knows how to work with partners incredibly well. Again, to me, the best in the world. Lithium, I know them, and Thunderhead, of course, intimately well. All three of these companies have been my clients, and actually, if you're counting this year, all three of them are my clients this year. So, and I've had something to do with talking back and forth around the partnerships, and so I'm well acquainted with them. And the thing I find really fascinating is the level of respect that both the partners have for Microsoft and Microsoft has for the partners. This is not a let's see what we can get out of them kind of deal. This is in all cases, Microsoft saying, look, we don't have community platform or journey platforms in our ecosystem. We're not going to build them. Therefore, we're going to partner, and we will highly respect and make sure it's a collaboration that works well with all our partners. Coveo is another company that like that with them, right? So they've got these partnerships that are extraordinary, and the reason they work is because of the respect both companies have for the others, both requirements and the others' needs. And Microsoft, who's the big guy here, really takes care of Lithium, takes care of Thunderhead, takes care of Coveo. And in return, those companies put a lot of time and effort into making sure that it works with them too. And it's a really good cooperative effort with technology partners who are partners with technologies that are lacking in a Microsoft ecosystem that Microsoft doesn't intend to build. Will they acquire these companies someday? The answer is, I don't doubt that they've looked into it. I mean, I don't know. I'm just Microsoft's Microsoft. They probably look into acquiring everybody, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That partnerships work perfectly well and benefit everybody perfectly well. It may come a time where Microsoft thinks they need to acquire one of them, and they will. I'm sure, if both parties are agreeable. But you find out through partnership first. To me, if I was recommending, I'd say partner first and acquire second, not first, right? And see how it goes. So Sure. Here we are, great companies working with Microsoft who respect each other.
Okay. I wanted to maybe just end on one more question, getting back to the title of your next book, A Commonwealth of Self-Interest. It's a title and maybe a theme that you have used for many years now. I mean, you had an article about that over 10 years ago. Has the theme sort of remained steady in your mind, or has it evolved? And if you're looking into this year or maybe even years down the road, is it the same interest, the same idea of self-interest now that it was before?
The answer is, 10 years ago, let's say, when I first wrote about it, it was aspirational, and that's being nice. It was really just, to me, a really cool way to put something, right? I liked the phrase I came up with, and my degrees are in English and journalism, so I'm very literary in the way I think of things. Now, let's say this, it's not an easy thing to understand with the phraseology, but it's a meaningful comment. It's a meaningful title, because it basically says that, look, self-interest is now, when it comes to self-interest, is paramount in your customer relationships. Consequently, you have to provide personalized interactions with your customers that are good enough for the customer to say to themselves, I feel as if this company not only knows me, but is doing something for me that is meaningful to me. And yet, because of your constraints, you can't provide everything to every customer, especially when you're doing it at scale. So the idea is to find those things, given the data you have about that customer, which is much greater than what you used to have. You used to have transactional data, some demographic data. Now you have social and personal data about a lot of people. Come up with those things which are meaningful enough to the individuals as a group, meaning 1,000 individuals out of 1,500 are interested in these particular things, this particular group of things, and then provide the customer with a choice so that they get to select which of those things they want to have. Meaning it could be an action, it could be an actual item, whatever. And the reason so that's why it's self-interest on the one hand, but the commonwealth of self-interest are the things that a business has to find effectively that make this work, right? So that they don't have to have a personal cost and provide a personal response, but they can provide a personalized response with choice that allows the individuals to select how they interact with the company. That's why it's more, the title has meaning now, where when I first started, it was, to me, a cool phrase to explain an idea. Now, to me, the reason the book's title that is still not easy to understand. It's not the greatest simple expression. The book's title actually is something I'm suggesting as a strategy for business. And the book is 100% on engagement, not on CRM per se.
Okay, Paul, what do you have planned next in your own work here? Are there events we'll see you at? Are there other projects that we'll see coming from you soon?
Well, the book's dominating my life at the moment. In fact, I just announced that, unlike any other year, it came out with the Lithium Watchlist review. I announced at the bottom of it that I'm not going to be writing the reviews for just the plain winners this year. So I owe Microsoft, because they were an elite review, and a couple others, and that's it. And the reason for that's the book. Now, the book is spawning all kinds of projects and all kinds of specific areas of interest. I'm looking at the analytics interest. I'm looking on a much greater look at the word and the concepts around ecosystems and platforms as kind of the drivers for business on the technology side of business, at least now, and even on the practitioner side in a different way, in a different extent, but important. I'm also looking at verticals a lot these days too, like an enormous amount of different verticals, what I call emotional verticals, which mean retail or financial services or health services or sports and media and entertainment. Things like that, meaning where you have an emotional investment as a customer, you have an emotional investment in them. And I'm very, very active in the sports part of it too. I sit on the global steering committee of an organization called SEAT, Sports Entertainment Alliance and Technology, which Microsoft actually has been a sponsor of for a while. I'm not of the organization. It's essentially a consortium of sports business professionals. I'm not a sports business professional. On the global steering committee, I'm the only non-sports person on the global steering committee. And I know Brent Leary is on the CRM steering committee, and he might be the only non-sports person on that. And we're working with the sports industry to bring CRM to them, and them to bring them out to the CRM universe too, which is a lot of panels, bringing people in and out. It's a fascinating world and has a very different set of customers. They already have advocates. You don't have to create advocates in the sports world. You have to open the door and figure out how to capture and use them in a way that works, because they're waiting to knock your doors down. That's what fans are. So I'm working on that side of things too. As on the side, I'm escalating doing some work, which I hope you'll hear about in a little bit, with the nonprofit world, just to help them out on some things, just with the higher education, potentially doing some stuff there, more on a board of advisory level, with these things. So I'm keeping busy. And in the meantime, I'm a very avid gamer. So I'm playing a lot of games on my PC when I go crazy. I play games on my PC. So I'm doing that. I built my own machine. I'm doing all kinds of I'm smartifying my home, all those kind of things too. So I have personal projects, which are a lot of fun also. So there you have it. There's my life in a nutshell at the age of 66.
Excellent. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and hearing your thoughts on all these different things.
Well, Jason, thanks for having me. I've known you a long time.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Right? And I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. And you're a good man. You always have been. And I try not to do too many of these days, just because I try not to. But you call, I'll be there.
Oh, wonderful. I love to hear that. This has been the MSDW podcast. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to be on the podcast, maybe you are a vendor with a product release or a consultant with a case study, or perhaps a VAR with a unique slant on the Dynamics ecosystem and product news, drop us a line. I am Jason Gumpert. You can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.